So it definitely looks like inverted fullbacks are going to be a key way of how Postecoglou looks to set up with Celtic. We've seen it in the Sheffield Wednesday game, and they did it a lot in the game against Charlton as well. So when Celtic were looking to build, Charlton were in like a sort of 4-3-3 or a 4-5-1. And what Stockley was trying to do as a striker was he was just trying to block off the passes into Sorrow. Now the hope is for Charlton or teams that set up like that is when the ball goes wide, they press it there, they force it back inside, and they stop this ball going into the middle. And you can see when it's the rest of a setup like that, centre midfielders are marked, and then these passes become quite difficult because the forward wide players can stop those passing lanes. But when the ball goes from right to left and Taylor comes in, like he did in the game there, it creates a little bit of a problem because, one, it helps Sorrow not having to do big runs across to receive the ball. When he drifts into that position now, Stockley's then got two players to try and deal with. So he needs to communicate well with this right winger. What allows Turnbull, McGregor, whoever it is in there, they can now advance further up. And if they push into these half spaces, it allows the wingers to pull wide. And what this allows, it creates a little bit more space. Now, there's a few ways that they can get out. If there's that little breakdown of communication and Taylor can get it, then they suddenly turn. This midfielder will be forced out. It can go into McGregor, and then we can have runners going in behind to attack the ball. If it doesn't happen like that and they close that space off, then McGregor can drop into this space here. This midfielder's never going to go that far out because if he does, then you've got the striker who can receive it in here and they can go in behind, or Beaton can just step out with the ball. So more than likely it goes into there. Now that's useful because as then McGregor brings the ball forward, Celtic can put players wide, and Taylor is in a much more advanced position to offer support. So if the ball was then to maybe say go wide into this position here, Taylor can make a run from there and then they can underlap and go in behind. So it does give a lot of options. The same was happening on the right hand side. Just another little example of when the fullback actually stays wide and doesn't invert, and some of the ways Celtic can look to play in behind. There's a phase around 40 minutes or so in the game where the ball goes wide to Taylor. He's pressed by the right winger. But importantly, as that happened, as the ball travels to him from there, Montgomery, who's wide, then drifts inside. And that just brings his fullback in and he positions himself just in between the centre half and the right back. Now what Taylor does here is as he's getting pressed, McGregor drops off into this pocket and goes there. Now as soon as that happens, the right winger tucks back inside like would you expect, and Taylor just progresses a bit further forward. Now when he receives the ball in here, what happens now? The right back has to get out and engage him. It leaves a little space in behind and he plays it round for Montgomery, who I think wins a corner. But again, in those positions, that wasn't the only thing that happened in different moments. There was moments where then they could play in and go for a 1-2 and different ways of playing. So again, it's just another example that if the fullbacks aren't inverted, they can utilise them in the wide area, and it does make it difficult for teams to defend against them when they're changing their approaches in different moments of the game. So in the last video, in the game against Sheffield Wednesday, we spoke about Sorrow dropping in to make a back three in the build-up. And this is really important when you play against a team that are comfortable sitting back in a kind of low block. When Sorrow does that, this is giving the centre-backs a little bit more of an opportunity to step forward with the ball. But in order for the ball to go forward, it's really important that the midfielders don't block off the passing lanes. And there's a really good example about 5 minutes into the game where the ball works across into Welsh, and Turnbull probably naturally wants to go and drop into that half space, but actually instead of running across the way, he drops back and it just pulls the man out just a little bit. Dembele positions himself right in between the centre half and the left back, dragging the left back out just enough. Ralston positioned himself in line here, and that's the left winger for Charlton, and Welsh just goes straight through and Dembele knocks around the corner and they attack forward. So even though we spoke in the last video about the inverted fullbacks, there is times where they don't invert and they give the natural width, and then it allows the front three to come in and mix. So again, it's a really good second option, and it doesn't make Celtic too predictable. It gives them different opportunities to progress forward and utilise the players they have on the park.